Okay, welcome to class number 2. Doesn't like me this way. Welcome to class number 2, titled Revealing or Discovering the Uniquely Jewish Soul. Today's class is exactly going to be talking about that. We're going to talk about the Jewish soul, Neto. Last time we spoke about the other soul, the soul where all our desires and survival. We call it survival soul. We call it the selfish soul. We call it self-centered soul. We call it the soul for that. We also call it the animalistic soul. This soul is exactly described is exactly all that, because even when we do something even when we do something good, but when we do something good, but for the wrong reason. In other words, even when we do something positive and we do it for our own gain or for our own respect, eventually, obviously, it's not the ultimate way to do a good thing, and also eventually that can unravel. And the reason is because is what it's sourced, the way it's sourced in. It's sourced in such a way. It's sourced from those energies. It's sourced from godly energies. Does that mean we can't do anything positive? That you could do positive, right? If we know that even when it comes to charity, if someone drops their wallet and a poor person finds the wallet and therefore survives and could live another day, you perform the mitzvah. So not only can you do a mitzvah when you have no attention, but when you have the wrong attention, you obviously could do positive things when you have no attention or the wrong attention. It does not stop us from doing good. However, it has that challenge. It has that disadvantage of it not being done the proper way. And we will discuss all this at greater length in the future classes. Today's class, however, is here to discuss the Jewish soul, the uniquely Jewish soul. Now, this is a completely separate soul, and as we will give a greater definition and a greater description of the soul, you will see how it is completely and uniquely different. And I try to be a little brave and put together a little bit of a share screen. And let's see how that works out. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up if you can. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about the uniquely Jewish soul. The first thing we're going to talk about is that what is the uniquely Jewish soul? The uniquely Jewish soul is completely different than any other creation or creature in this world or in any spiritual worlds. It is because it is absolutely, unequivocally a part of God. Literally, not metaphorically, it's literally a part of God. We have this statement in Job, as I have it on the screen over here, a part of God above. And in later literature, the word literally is added many times, telling you that it's not a theoretical thing, it's not a metaphorical thing, it's an actual, realistic, factual thing. Now, obviously, that is something which is very difficult to understand, because we don't know God we don't know and experience God. We experience godliness, we experience spirituality, we experience meaning, but we don't know God. So to explain what that means, we're going to go through several parables to explain this concept to this class. And with each parable, we're trying to understand it on a deeper level. Now, if you don't get how one parable is deeper than the other level, you can write it down. We can discuss it afterwards when we'll have opportunity to ask questions. But the main thing is to get the point, to bring out this idea that it's actually a part of God. The first example that we have, we're going to bring it for none no less, the Torah. What does it say? The first example is titled Blowing versus Talking. When the first human being was created, when Adam, which has a neshama klalis, a general soul, when the first human being was created, it said, and he blew into his nostrils a soul of life. This idea can be simply understood if you take a piece of paper, any piece of paper, or you have a balloon, or if you had a birthday recently, and you give it a blow. You give it several blows. After a while, you will naturally become tired. And the reason for this is because it takes a lot more energy. Now, if you haven't tried that yet, try to take anything or just blow in the ear. Try to blow several times rapidly, one after another. Go ahead, be brave. Come on, try to blow. Here we go. We have someone that's brave and giving it a try. Okay. So as we see, blowing exerts a lot of energy from someone that's blowing. Versus when someone talks, you can talk and talk and talk and talk, and depending on your gender, you might be able to talk for a year straight or for 2 years straight. And it does not take the same energy, and you don't have to catch your breath after talking for a long time. The reason is simple, because we could breathe while we're talking. But there's something, it actually rooted on a much deeper level, because when we blow, we're exerting a part of us which is very, very close to our essential being. We're blowing actual energy out. And therefore, it takes that much more energy. And after just a few blows, we're going to be tired. Likewise, we see in the medical world that many medical challenges, the first thing they do, they plug you onto a ventilator. That's one of the main ways of treating now for the coronavirus. Now that they put people on ventilators, and that's why there was different challenges that different states or different hospitals were running out of ventilators, because simply when someone is in trouble, before you even have a cure, you put them on a ventilator. Why? Because the breathing is an essential part of your being, and a part that's very close to your soul. And therefore, it is your energy. And therefore, it's important to be able to breathe well. And when someone's not feeling well, that can be at least a temporary cure is to breathe for them, CPR, etc. You have that in the matter of cure. You also have that when you're not feeling so well, even when you just have a cold or a fever. Sometimes you feel like if you go outside and you have nice, cold, fresh air, sometimes it can make you feel a lot better. There's no reason to talk about this at a great extent. I think everyone gets that point. That when you blow, it comes from a much deeper part in your soul, and therefore it takes that much more energy. Versus when someone's talking, it doesn't take as much energy. Why is that important? So we see clearly that the neshama, the soul, is the way it came about was through God blowing it into the nostrils of Adam, and therefore He gave him a soul of life. Versus every other creation, we know if we read anywhere in the Torah, you see we know that it's called Asara Mamorot, the 10 sayings, and we know as we read through Genesis, it says that God said there shall be light, and there was light, and God said there should be water, and there was water, and God said there should be animals, etc., and there was. In other words, to say, as it's explained in great length in Kabbalah and Chassidus, reserved for another class, of exactly how this happens. But it's explained that it wasn't just the fact that was the way that God chose to create, right? Obviously, God could have created in any shape or form, or rather, that is the way it is created. In other words, to say every letter has a certain spiritual energy. And with every combination of letters, it has a different combination of different spiritual energies. And as it descends into our world, it gets more, it gets further away from its revealed spiritual being, and becomes more mundane, more physical. It becomes into a physical creation, maybe even a physical creation as light or water or even the earth. That being said, when you speak, it is much further away from the way you breathe. And that's why, so when you say something, someone could take it away, record it, write it down, or repeat it, and it's almost as if you are saying it yourself. Meaning to say, the purpose of speech is that it should be separated from you. And the reason why it could be completely separated from you is because it is not an essential part of your soul. It's further disconnected from your soul than from what you breathe. However, when it comes to breathing or blowing, you can't take the message of breathing and blowing and pass it on. And matter of fact, you can't blow on forever. The only breath that you have is at the moment you're breathing. Again, bringing out this idea that breathing is directly connected to your being, to the essential part of your soul. And therefore, what's the point of here? Therefore, we're trying to bring out that the creation of every single being, including the previous soul that we spoke about in the previous chapter, is a creation. It was a creation, means it's made into a new being, into a new creation, into a new thing. Yesterday or a moment ago, it wasn't this thing. Now I created into this thing. Before God said, "Let there be light," there was no light. Neto, no light. And once God said, "There shall be light," light was created. The same thing with water, and same thing with the earth. However, the soul was not created, was not formed. It's rather an extension of God himself. God put himself into the Jewish body. And he blew into his nostrils a soul of life. So we see from the first parable, which is brought in the Torah, shows us clearly that the soul is unique, definitely different from everything else. And we see it's closer, just like by a person, it's closer to the essence. Likewise, obviously God's not blowing, but it's trying to bring out this concept. It's trying to bring out this concept that it's closer to the most essential part of God. We move on to the next example. An example of thought versus speech. And again, we have this similar concept, but it's on a much deeper level on thought versus speech. Why? His thought is not something which is felt only when it becomes an external part of you. It's also felt when it's within you, and you never reveal to anybody what you are thinking. And on the contrary, and even more so, I would say that the primary aspect of thought, yes, you can reveal your thoughts, but the primary function of thought is when it's not shared. The primary function of thought for itself, not part of the whole picture, but the primary function of thought for itself is while you're thinking, and when you're thinking, not bothered, when no one's around, when there's no distractions whatsoever, not another person, not another being, and not another thought, not someone else's thought, lost in thought. Versus speech, the primary purpose of speech is to reveal to someone else what's going on inside of you. In other words, the primary purpose of speech is revelation. Primary purpose of speech is for somebody else, for something external from you. Maybe you tell them how much you love them. Maybe you trying to reveal. Maybe you trying to reveal the great wisdom that you've learned or have, or trying to even instruct someone, or letting off steam. It's all forms of speech, but in order that others that it should go external, should go away from you. It shouldn't stay in you. Matter of fact, if there wouldn't be anybody in the world, speech for itself would not have a function. If you would not have anyone to talk to, not even a screen, speech for itself will not have a function. However, thought, the more you're isolated, the more you get to think. Even more so. That being the case, we find it all the time. All you have to do is turn on the news and listen to someone talking, and you know that they're hiding a big percentage of the truth. When someone speaks, they're capable of not expressing what they're really thinking. They're capable of giving you a forced and distorted image of what they want you to think. A distorted image of the reality, a distorted image of the truth. Something that is essentially true cannot be distorted, and therefore thought cannot lie. Because thought is an essential part of a being, you can't tell your thought that you're thinking something else. You could think you're something that you're not, but you can't you can't change your thought. And for that matter, that brings us to the third point, that when it comes to speech, anyone can stop talking at any moment. Well, not anyone. Most people can stop talking at any given moment. It's not time to talk. You can be silent. However, when it comes to thoughts, we cannot stop thinking. If someone stops thinking, they're not alive. Their brain is not functioning. The only thing we're capable of changing is changing what we're thinking, but we cannot stop thought from acting, because thought is an essential part of our essence of our soul. It's very, very closely tied to our soul. And just like a soul, our life cannot cease to be while we're still alive, likewise, a thought cannot cease to be. And therefore, when we read in Bereshit Rabbah, the Jewish soul is risen in divine thought, meaning to say that the Jewish soul comes from God's thought, is God's thought. It tells us that the Jewish soul is not something that is external, like an additional being that God created, an existence apart from God, but rather it is an essential part of God itself. He didn't create a new being and put this being into the Jewish body, but rather took a part of himself that already exists and put it into him. Even more so, when someone shares their thought to you through speech or through writing, whatever it is, and you're thinking that thought, you're thinking that exact thought that they were thinking. Maybe a deep thought, or simply a joke, or simply a one-liner. In other words, when each one of us are thinking right now that the Jewish soul is an actual part of God, we're not all thinking different thoughts. We're all thinking the same thought, which is sourced from the very, very, very beginning of Genesis, and he blew into his nostrils, talking about Adam, that God blew a piece of himself into the soul, and that is the soul of Adam, and that is the soul that we have as well. Versus, if you repeat these same words, that the Jewish soul is a literal part of God, you are saying it with your own words. You might be repeating the words you heard from me, but it is your own words. That is the second example that we have regarding the Jewish soul. The third example that we have is an example of father and son. And there's a lot of points we could take out from this example of father and son. And throughout prayer and throughout the Torah, it is mentioned plentiful of times, the concept of the father and son. We just have two over here. Israel is my firstborn, Exodus 4:22. And you are children unto God your God, born in Devarim, at the end of Devarim in chapter 14, in the very beginning of chapter 14. And many, many, many times, if anyone opened the Siddur on any day of the week, and for sure on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, you'll see repeated again, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our Master, this idea that the God is the Father of the Jewish people. This brings us to a deeper concept, and in a way, even though it's deeper, it's something we could relate on a much more practical level. Point number one is that why connection between a father and son is a deeply rooted, essential connection. Essential connection means that it's not because of any external reason. When two people meet each other and they are fond of each other, it's usually because of an external reason. Not usually, it's always because of an external reason. Even when you say we tick, it's because we speak the same language, because we laugh at the same jokes. Is a joke who I really am? Is the language I speak who I really am? Because we both like fast cars. Is that who I really am? Really? If God forbid I can't drive, or if I can't afford a car, do I become a different person? I might be friends with someone else now, yes. Or love, or a liking of somebody is usually because they've done something nice for us. They gave us a nice compliment. They greeted us with a smile. They bought us a gift. They gave us a valuable connection. But that is all very important things, but things that are external from our being. It's not necessarily a part of us, because this same smile is just the way it made me feel at the moment. And from this point on, they're going to be a terrible person to me. Chances are the love is going to dwindle as well. As we learn in Ethics of Fathers, which now we're studying between Passover and Shavuos and throughout the summer months, that says like this: Kol ava shetola b'davar, batla ava batla davar. Any love, any relationship that is dependent on something, the husband and wife are only in love with each other because of their looks. Comes the time the thing that made them love each other is nullified, is not relevant anymore. They got into an accident, or they forgot how to put on makeup, or he stopped shaving, or whatever it is. Batal ava, the thing that that their love was dependent on was nullified. The love will fall apart automatically as well. If the only thing holding two people together is a particular glue, you take away the glue, the connection is gone. However, a love between a parent and a child, love between a father and son, goes much deeper than that. Sure, you have a love of a father and a son because, do you know my son? He came up with the cure for coronavirus. I'm proud of him. And he got a nice windfall from that. He made a few $1 million, and he bought me a nice yacht also. Made me love him even more. And he's in the media all the time in a positive way. I'm extremely proud of him. Wherever I go, everyone say, "Oh, you're the father and so and so." Sure. or something that's more realistic. Anytime that your son just does well, your daughter does well, they get good grades in school and they get the good job, and then they live in a proper life, a life that is in line with your belief system. It makes you proud of them, and it reveals your love for them, and it makes you say, "I love you." However, we all know that the truth is that is not the reason why you love them. We know the reason why you love them is because they're essentially connected to us. And the greatest proof of this is a son can be full of crime and in trouble and up to no good his whole life. But if a son is taken captive, took a flight to Afghanistan or to Iraq, and they took him as a hostage, there's no father that would not stop turning the world upside down until they could save their child. If their child's in trouble and a parent has the capability of helping them, they're going to forget all the things they said and have done to them, or the lack of things that they said have done, and they will turn over the world to save that child. That is when the love becomes revealed. But that's not the love we're talking about. We're talking about a love of a father, a parent that has for a child, even if they're not in contact with each other. Even if they haven't seen each other for 10 years. It's a deeply rooted, connected love. And that is because the father says, this is my child, it's a part of me. It comes from me myself. And therefore, there's nothing in the world that can break that bond between them. What you have from this is it's a deeply rooted love. And when it becomes revealed, maybe it's not always revealed, but when it comes revealed, it's burning with the most beautiful love, not just because of what just revealed it, but rather because it reveals what's the deeply rooted love that was there from before. Number two, it's an unbreakable connection. There is nothing that could sever this connection. We just read in this past week's Parsha about Yom Kippur. One of the most amazing things of Yom Kippur is that it's known as a Day of Atonement. Why? My father, or whatever you want to call God in heaven, told me clearly, simply, do this and don't do that. Wait for the Torah, wait for the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, the holiday of Shavuot is coming up, and don't serve any idols. Don't serve any God apart from me. And what do the Jews do? They create a new God, they create a golden calf, and they start bowing to it and serving it as if there's no other existence except for this golden calf. What happens? This is not a beautiful time in Jewish history. It's a time that God's love for his children was not so revealed. And Moses breaks the tablets, and eventually convinces God to forgive the Jewish people. And he goes up at Mount Sinai and he sees a second pair of tablets, and he comes down on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, the culmination of God's forgiveness comes out. What happens in Kippur? On Yom Kippur, God says, there is a connection that each and one of us have with God. There's a connection that God has with each and every Jewish person in the world, whether they know they're Jewish or whether they act Jewish or they don't act Jewish. Whether they love that they're Jewish or that they're flat out anti-Semite. Whether they do any of the mitzvahs of God's mitzvahs in the Torah, or whether they choose to say that I don't believe in this stuff. There's a deeply rooted connection that is unbreakable. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father in heaven. God says in Kippur, this connection cannot be tainted by any action whatsoever that anyone may or may not do. There's a deeper connection. There's a deeper love, regardless of what you make of yourself. You have a neshama. You have a Jewish soul. This Jewish soul is a part of God, a part of me. And there is nothing that can break this connection. And once we plug into this connection, reveal this essential connection, and khalas, there's nothing else to talk about. There's nothing else to talk about. They can even create a golden calf and God will still forgive us. Avinu Malkeinu will reveal a Father in heaven. The ultimate sin, denying in God a golden calf, even being an anti-Semite. God says, you're my child. I want the best for you. I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. I'm going to do whatever I can to inspire you. And that's why we also find in Yom Kippur that out of the blue an inspiration to do another mitzvah, to be more involved in the Jewish community, to feel more Jewish, always comes out. The Yom Kippur, there's always something that comes out. During the times of Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashanah, the month leading up to Rosh Hashanah, especially the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the highlight on Yom Kippur itself, especially at the culmination of Yom Kippur, if you don't ditch it and run to a early break a fast meal, if you're at the end of the Yom Kippur, there's a deeply spiritual feeling you can feel at that moment. And no, I hate to break it to you, it's not the rabbi's speech. It might help, but there's something unique about that time. It's a time that God says, I recognize the most deepest part of the Jewish soul. I recognize the most essential Jewish connection that each one of us has. The neshama. This also, it's a side note, but it's worthy to note. We have next Monday, I believe, we have the small holiday called Lag BaOmer. The theme of Lag BaOmer is Avat Yisrael, love of a fellow Jew, love of a fellow man. Rabbi Akiva, one of the heroes of the holiday, was known for saying, love a fellow Jew as yourself. This is the greatest rule of the entire Torah. Not going at great length. This is the explanation how it's possible to love a fellow Jew as yourself. Myself? I love myself very much. I'm willing to turn a blind eye to almost anything that I do. I still love myself. Right? There's no hate. Very few people are capable of hating themselves, and if they are, they better get medical help quickly. How could I love someone else to that extent? They could do everything wrong to me, and I'll still love them. And the answer is when we plug into this neshama, when we recognize that we're all made out of the same thing, when we recognize that we're all part of the same body, the same soul, when we recognize that we're all God's children, then everything else falls apart. The trick and the challenge is how to reveal this. And this we'll discuss in the later chapters. You think this is it? There's more. Oh, I didn't make the next slide. Looks like I didn't make the next slide. Let me see. No, I forgot to say the next slide. Okay. We'll do without a slide. To understand all of this, there's a basic concept discussed all over Kabbalah and Chassidus. And that is the idea of something I truly want versus something I want for an alternative motive. So this is called an inner desire or an external desire. An inner desire and external desire. This idea is very simple. When you go to the store and you want to buy a bottle of milk or maybe some toilet paper, it's not that you're dying to go to the store and stand in line, at least for most of us. Maybe now is a special time, we want to get out of the house. But for the most part, it's not that we're dying to go to the store and stand in line, but rather we're going to the store because we want the thing that we're going to buy, the bottle of milk or the toilet paper or whatever it may be. Likewise, there's people that go to work because they love work more than staying at home. But for the most part, most people go to work because they have to get their wages in order to have to live their life that they live. So, in addition to understanding that a Jewish soul, it comes from the deepest, most essential part of God, we could also understand on a simpler level of God's desire, so to speak. The more that it's an inward desire, the more that the ultimate purpose is for that thing, the more that is that is a real desire versus a desire with an alternative motive, an inner desire or an external desire. It's an idea to keep in mind to pull these things together. Going back to the father and son, this deep, unbreakable love, and therefore Yom Kippur, all is forgiven. A friend of mine that he has a Chabad house in India. He's actually not there anymore, but he was there for quite a few years. And one year, he has a lot of Israeli backpackers over there. And I don't know if you've met every Israeli in the world, but there's a lot of Israelis that were brought up in the kibbutz. As a matter of fact, a lot of Israelis use the word kibbutz as saying as they're an atheist. Use it synonymously as saying as an atheist. Not that I have something against the kibbutz. It's a beautiful idea, but it's a sad reality that there's a lot of Israelis that are like that. And naturally, as it comes the second and third generation, they know less and less and less about their religion. They know less and less about the traditions. They know less and less about their roots and about their people. So there was this one backpacker. I think if I'm not mistaken, he told me it was a girl, young girl. I think was right after her army, right after her service in the Israeli army. A lot of Israelis work for a few months, collect a few dollars, and then they go to the cheapest place in the world, cheapest, most beautiful place in the world, and they basically backpack until the money runs out. Some of them backpack till after the money runs out. So that's a lot of his clientele that he gets. So one day, one of the Israelis show up, and she proclaims that she's an atheist and she doesn't believe in God whatsoever. And the rabbi was in a good mood, and she's challenging him. Right? Usually, when you walk into a place and you pronounce that you're an atheist, good for you. Enjoy your life. Right? Move on. But she came challenging the rabbi. The rabbi was in a good mood. She said, "Yalla, let's have this conversation." She says, "Oh, you're an atheist. It means you don't believe in God, right?" "Yeah." "It means you don't believe in the commandments that God gave us." "No, if there's no God, there's no commandments." I said, "Okay, if that's the case, come into the shul, come into the synagogue. We have the Torah scroll. Open the ark, take the Torah out, and throw it on the floor and say, I don't believe in this stuff." He says, "Rabbi, that's not I'm a very loving person. That's not respectful. That's not respectful. I can't do that." So what are you worried? So the rabbi says, "What are you worried about? You worried you're gonna offend me? People are gonna think of you badly? Let's lock the door. Just be me and you in the room, and I'll see that you're doing it, just to prove your point." So Rabbi, you don't understand. I don't want to disrespect you in particular. So that's a whole conversation. She says, "Okay, fine. I'll go out of the room, lock the door, we'll pull the blinds. You do it. I'll trust you. You come out, you tell me you did it. I'll trust you that you did it. It's finished." And she's going on. Until finally she says, "I can't. I'm not capable. I'm not willing to do such a thing." Right, so it's not a earth-shattering story. Obviously, I tell her I'm not shocked. Why am I not shocked? The reason why you can't do it is a very simple reason. The reason is because you have a neshama. As hidden as it may be, and as hidden as you may want it to be, it's still deep inside it. And when you put yourself in a situation that you have to deny your existence, your being, your most essential part of you, your soul is not going to allow you to do it. It's going to say, no, I can't. And that's why over generations, it's not just this generation, but every generation, there's always a challenge. And it didn't just happen in the Spanish Inquisition. There was a challenge that says convert or die, modernize or get lost. Every generation, they have this challenge in a different shape and form. The only question is of how blunt and how outright are we challenged with that. And we have hundreds of thousands of stories how they challenged the Jew to get up and say, convert or die. And it could have been a Jew that knew nothing about Judaism. A Jew that would have classified himself as an anti-Semite. But when it came up to convert or die, he was not capable of doing it. She was not capable of doing it. They said, I was born a Jew and I'll die a Jew. Why? That is because we have a neshama and it's unbreakable. We have a connection with God and it's unbreakable. Yes, it could be covered over. Yes, it could be not revealed that many times. But when we're pressed to the wall, it comes out. Trying to see where we're holding in time over here, so how much further I can go. Oh, we have to wrap up. Okay. So I'm going to conclude. There's one deeper level, and we use it with the same parable of a father and a son. By the way, all these levels are all true. All of them are true. But obviously, we're trying to reach the deepest level right now for the sake of understanding. The function and how it relates to us in a practical way, we'll learn about that in the coming classes. Back to our parable of father and son. A father gives birth to a son in a very special way. A son could only be born when there's a relationship between a father and a mother. There's a part that the father does, and there's a part that the mother does. Father delivers the seed, and in the mother, it grows into an entire being. So I find something very interesting. We find that the mind of the father is directly connected to the creation of the seed. In Svarim, it says that the seed actually comes from the extra parts of the father's mind. In the current medical science world, they don't use these exact words because they haven't discovered it yet. But rather, we see a very direct correlation between the seed being created and the father's mind being involved, to the extent that it's almost impossible to extract the seed if the father's mind is not involved. In the current medical world, we see it's a very close connection between the mind and the seed. And in Svarim, it's brought that there's not just a connection, but it's a direct connection. But regardless, the point is the same. That it has to be the involvement of the father has to be involved with the deepest part of his existence, with his mind, with his feeling, with his everything. That's how the child is created. Maybe not in a revealed way, right? Obviously, a seed is not a human being, but it does eventually become into the human being. In other words, to say that this child that is born is not just connected to the father because it came from him, but rather it came from a part of the father. And it's actually a part of the father which grows into a full human being. So it is true to say that a child is actually a part of the father. Not only that, we see that every part of our body is directly connected to our mind all the time. If someone, God forbid, suffers a stroke, or part of the mind does not relate to a certain part of the body, they lose the function of that part of the body. If any part of someone's body, God forbid, gets cut off, it does not live anymore. It dies. It ceases to be a part of the person's body. It's disconnected from that body. However, for the most part, it does not directly affect the life of the other parts of the body. The head, the mind, as well as other parts, but just to bring out the point, the mind, because it's where the soul dwells. If you disconnect the soul from the body, there's no life. If you disconnect the soul force from the body, there's no life. So not only is there a connection to every part of the body, to the mind, because it comes from it, and it's the mind that tells it what to do and how to function, but actually there's a constant connection on the very simple living aspect of it. And if you could use your imagination, that also extends to something that's separated from someone's body. If its root, if its source is the mind, there's always going to be some sort of connection, even though that may be something that's very difficult to understand. So that tells us that the neshama doesn't just come from a deep part of God, but rather comes from part of God. It's rather a part of God in itself. I just want to point out that obviously everything comes from God, and obviously there is nothing external from God's existence, right? However, the neshama is more directly connected. It's not the time and place to get into that conversation. But simply put, the way we see everything, we don't see every existence as a part of God. We have to think about it, we have to meditate it, and then we can maybe understand or relate it to some shape or form or feel it. Another point I want to bring out, because the neshama is a part of God, it is not something that could be created. You cannot create a God. You cannot create a God even out of something else, even out of blood cells, embryo, or anything. You cannot create a God. And therefore, a soul is something that is obviously treasured because it's a part of God, but it's also something we cannot taint. There's a beautiful, constant connection we have with God, and there's nothing we could or should want to do about that. And that just brings out the beautiful and unbreakable bond that we constantly have. So to conclude, the Jewish soul is literally a part of God. We brought the parable of a child of God's son. And because it is an essential connection to God, therefore the bond is, like I said, unbreakable, and it's also everlasting. It is not limited by time and place. And therefore, a side note, the neshama lives on even after 120 years, even after we pass away, the soul lives on, because it's not a creation like our body. It is not bound by time and space, just like God isn't bound by time and space. With that, we will conclude, and we will open the floor to any comments or questions.